Mea culpa, mea gran culpa. Well, CULPA is something that you will hear a lot during AENG 201. CULPA often means guilt or blame. It's a burden that we carry. And in this course, I don't want you to see it as a burden, but I know that sometimes it can be. What you need to know is that CULPA is a nickname for culminating paper. Culminating is the key word here. This is a project that you'll be working on throughout the course that will essentially be our target that will show mastery of the objectives of the course. So the CULPA process begins during the first week. You will be choosing topics. We call them motifs. You choose a motif from the texts that we are reading. And a motif is an image that's a word picture. It appeals to one of our senses. Most often it's a visual image, but it might also be an image that appeals to our sense of taste or smell or touch. And so I will be asking you to choose a motif from the list that we provide you. It's also possible for you to come up with your own, but just know we're going to be guiding you toward motifs that we have seen pop up again and again throughout the literature. We are studying two texts in this course, the Iliad and the Pilgrim's Progress. One, the Iliad, is a pre-Christian text. The Pilgrim's Progress is a Christian text. And so what you're going to be doing in this CULPA paper is you will be contrasting the two worldviews. What is the motif in the pre-Christian worldview, and what is the motif in the Christian worldview? And why is there a change? Well, we understand that Christ is at the center of history, and it is because of Christ that these motifs have such a profound change. For example, water. Water is a motif. We would say it's archetypal. It's at the basic core of human existence. We can't survive without it. In fact, our bodies are made of 75-80% water. So, what does water mean? To the ancient Greeks, it meant nourishment. It meant cleansing. It was a part of their ritual of getting ready to do various activities. As we study the role of Christ in history, we understand that water changed. He changed water. He even changed water within the Hebrew faith, the Jewish faith, as he himself was a Jew, and he took water and he gave it new meaning. He told Nicodemus, unless you're born again of water and the Spirit, you can't enter the heaven of God, the kingdom of heaven. So we want you to choose a motif that appeals to you, that's interesting to you. Some other examples include marriage, sacrifice, and glory. So think about what those words mean to you, and think, how are they coming out of the literature? Are there situations where glory is referenced? And as you hear that word in the context of the Iliad, are there things that come to mind in a Christian worldview that are a direct contrast with that view in the Iliad? So what you're doing is you're tracing a motif. You should begin this process from the first week of the course. By the end of the first week, we will be crafting our thesis statement. The thesis statement involves three main elements. It is a single sentence, but it's got to involve context, meaning that it begins by stating in what way this topic is going to be addressed, using what texts or what situations. And so for us, These are literary texts, literary contexts. And so we would say in Homer's The Iliad. And we would also say in Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. Those are the contexts that you have to be using to frame your thesis statement from the beginning. So context is number one. Number two, you have to demonstrate that there is a change in your motif because of Christ. And that the whole purpose is going to be to show the contrast that is created by that central change. So as we said with water, Christ changed the meaning, first having to do with cleansing and sustenance or nourishment, and changing that to be being born again, having eternal life because of that new water. The third thing you need to do is you need to have a concise, specific statement or assertion about your motif. Your motif is very broad and general, and so you need to say something specific about that motif. If it's water, you have to say that in the Iliad, or with the ancient Greeks, water represented cleansing. But Christians, or the Pilgrim's Progress, views water as something that is a transition from death to life. That's a specific statement about the motif. After you craft your thesis, during week 2, we will be constructing our introduction. The introduction involves a general explanation of your motif in 4 or 5 sentences. And then the second to last sentence is your thesis statement, and the very last sentence of your introduction is your forecasting statement. This forecasting statement is probably the most difficult part for many students because they're not used to doing this. I call it a roadmap. I call it an outline. It's basically a list of topics that you will cover in your literary analysis essay. All essays should be organized, and from the very beginning you should be thinking, what is my outline for this essay? How is it going to be organized? So I would encourage you from the very first week and second week, begin constructing your outline. I will ask you to share your outline with me informally. It won't be for a grade, but it will be a part of the process of our writing. After the second week, we will be getting into analysis. And so in weeks 2 and 3, 5 and 6, you will be constructing 4 close reading assignments. These close reading assignments are the raw material for your CULPA paper. It's also a chance for you to exercise the skills of literary analysis. I have another video that's all about close reading, and I won't go into depth here about that, but just know that your objective is to create a body. I like to think of us all as Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, and we are shaping one creation from various places and pieces, and you're stitching them together. And so when you do a literary analysis assignment, you're always thinking, how does this assignment support the thesis that I created for the CULPA during week 1? By week 4, you should have 2 literary analysis assignments. And at the end of week 3 into week 4, you will be creating the body of your CULPA as far as you can to this point. And you've only read the Iliad up to week 4. And so you're basically creating half of the body. Again, this is going to the Frankenstein analogy. It's important that you think of how things fit together. You don't want to be sloppy with your stitching. You want to think of things like, what's your argument? How does each paragraph begin with a topic sentence? How does each sentence in the paragraph support that topic sentence? And what are your transitions from paragraph to paragraph and from section to section? Remember, it's not as sophisticated to write an essay simply talking about one book and then talking about another book. A better strategy would be to think about categories that you can discuss across the Iliad, the Pilgrim's Progress, and the Bible. What are categories that you can talk about? So if I'm discussing water, I want to talk about how water is a means for purification, it's a means for nourishment, and it's a means for travel. If I have those three categories, then I can actually go back and forth between the texts in each section, showing the contrast, showing how in ancient Greek civilization, the ancient Greek worldview saw cleansing as necessary for righteousness. But in the Pilgrim's Progress, it's a righteousness that comes from elsewhere. And you know, the instances where we have Christian, the character in Pilgrim's Progress, going through water, they're not always pleasant. He starts out going through the Slough of Despond, basically a swamp of despair. And that's water. It's dirty, filthy water. And it's something that we should be paying attention to. You know, on our own, left to our own devices, we are not able to purify ourselves. So I like water as an example just because it's something so basic and it's so different depending on a pre-Christian worldview and a Christian worldview. So again, my paper, if I were writing this paper, I would have my introduction. I would have a body that begins with cleansing and then goes to nourishment and then goes to water as a vehicle. That's an exciting paper to read. What I want you to know is that you will be creating your conclusion during week 4. And so you'll have your whole paper pretty much set up. You'll have introduction, a body based on the Iliad and contrasting the Iliad with the Bible, and then you'll have your conclusion. So what you do for the second half of the course is basically you keep working with the paper in progress. Again, during weeks 3 and 4, you're going to be turning in what's called the CULPA revision, and this is a revision of the body. So it's basically taking your 2 analysis assignments for the Iliad and restructuring them. What I want to emphasize here is I would like you to turn in the introduction, the body, and the conclusion all as one document so that you're starting to visualize what this paper will look like. At this point, after 4 weeks, you should have 4 to 5 pages, which is well on your way to finishing the CULPA. After week 4, things accelerate quite a bit. You continue with your literary analysis assignments from the Pilgrim's Progress, building the other half of your CULPA body, and by week 6 you have a complete full draft. It should be full length. Please make sure you adhere to the length, and remember that we're talking about double-spaced pages, and you need to have APA or MLA format, and I'm not counting for APA the title page or a works cited page, references page. Please add that on in addition. I would like you to always have a references page, even though you may have only 3 sources, 2 or 3 sources. So this is the general format. In week 6 we have the draft, and then in week 7 we have the final draft, the final product, the target, the culminating target that we've been shooting for all along. I hope that this helps you understand the CULPA, and I hope that it maybe will alleviate some of your stress. We will be talking every week more and more about the CULPA, and hopefully it will open up as you open up your books. God bless this process for you, and the beauty is He takes away our sins and our guilt, and any negative feelings we might have about this. And I pray that He can do that for you.